Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. A crazy episode. A lot of interesting things went down this episode, so let's break everything down. What I thought was so interesting is that Jughead, obviously we saw at the end of the episode, he's playing a game with Fang, Sweet Pea, Tony, and Cheryl. Now what's really interesting is the fact is that Jughead kind of figures it out that basically a lot of Griffin and Gargoyles is reflective of Riverdale. He's even talking about like orcs and who else, I forgot who else he was mentioning, but it's kind of like, oh, that's representative. That might as well be the ghoulies and the serpents. Just like certain aspects of life in Riverdale are reflected in the game, that basically the game was built around every aspect that is Riverdale. It's like basically everything that we've kind of come across has basically kind of been the game kind of come to life in certain regards when you actually think about it, which is kind of fascinating. Because that makes Jughead start thinking like, whoever created Griffin and Gargoyles, this is how they see Riverdale. And if you can understand the game, you can understand that person's mind and track them down. That's his thought process. And so for him, it's like, I'm going to be the game master. And obviously you can tell Jughead is severely kind of getting a little off the beaten path with this whole situation. Betty's trying to tell him not to go down this path, but he's kind of going anyway. To the point, he's kind of going a little crazy. They're definitely taking this game very seriously, to the point Sweet Pea and Fang are messing around with arrows and stuff, and they're like, yeah, let's go on a real adventure. And then Jughead doing the whole can thing and getting Cheryl to shoot it. And it's kind of like, okay, you want to prove yourself? Go do that then. Sweet Pea's like, no. He's like, well, good. So shut up. I'm the game master. I'm the one that decides everything. Like whatever quest we go on, if we take this game out off the board, that's my decision. I'm like, that's so interesting. Because I guess in my head, I never would have thought that someone like Jughead would have fallen prey to it. But I guess it's like, the fact of the matter is, because like I said, that's the thing, everyone kind of had that misconception that the game will get anyone that's weak-willed or weak-minded. But it's like, no, even a strong-minded person, probably, I guess this game has a way of creeping into your mind and your soul, because it digs deep into your desires. And Jughead's desire, his desire is to solve this mystery, to, dive into this darkness until he figures this out. And so I think it plays with that. Because the thing is, like, it might be a situation, and I think it still goes back to it. We haven't seen her do it yet, but I think ultimately Betty might end up playing the game herself, because for her it might be the only way to figure this all out. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the darkness that this game has a way of pulling out of people, how it affects someone like Betty, who already kind of has a dark side, and we kind of know she kind of got that dark side from Hal, which is interesting all on its own, because it's interesting because Betty started going down a much darker path last season to catch the Black Hood, and now we see Jug kind of doing a similar thing to catch the Gargoyle King, which is kind of interesting. It seems like they have this need, this desire in them to figure something out, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get to that. And I think that kind of shows you this bit of a flaw between Betty and Jug that they both share. They're always reaching for something that's just out of their grasp. You get what I'm trying to say? It's kind of fascinating. What I also thought was kind of a neat thing that this episode did is it balances in between of like, oh yeah, the game and reflecting what's happening later on. Like obviously I'm skipping around, but the prison break and the game, it's literally reflective of each other, pointing out even more like the connection between the game and Riverdale. It's almost spooky how that happened, but that was also supposed to be a campaign that Jug made up himself. Maybe he thought he made it up when in actuality, or maybe, because it's like, not unless someone knew what Jug was doing. Like, I guess that's proof that Jughead is kind of getting in a similar mindset as the Game Master, because everything kind of going down like that is almost like the Game Master's kind of watching the game kind of progress, and Jughead's just kind of playing into that same regard of like watching the game progress. Like his game is very reflective of the Game Master's because they're kind of similar on the same wavelength, which is not necessarily a good thing, because like once you're starting to go down in the mindset of, that's the thing, like once again, when you're trying to understand a dark mind, don't get lost in the darkness yourself, because you might have a hard time coming back. That's probably going to be a big part of Jug's story this season, just trying to come back after being, you get so close to the darkness, it has a tendency just to pull you in. You might not be strong enough on your own to pull back. So there's that. But kind of diving into other stuff. Betty ends up telling, not everyone finds out the truth about their parents in this whole situation. Like, Cheryl still doesn't know, Veronica still doesn't know, but Betty she tells Kevin, Reggie, and Josie about this game and their parents' connection. Obviously, she leaves out the detail about what exactly it is that they hid 25 years ago, why they're going through such trouble to hide this. And I love that Reggie's like, my dad wouldn't be into some like cosplay thing with losers or whatever. And it's kind of interesting. That kind of took me by surprise. Sadly, the thing is, obviously, Tommy, Keller, and Serena kind of, McCoy end up, denying any time Josie and Kevin try to bring it up about the game, and they're like, "Oh no, we never played it," like outright lying, and then bringing up the fact is that they're getting married, which is that complicated situation all on its own, especially for Josie and Kevin, because it's that them doing that just to cover it up, or is that just because they legitimately are happy? I don't know. I mean, it is kind of interesting because this news is coming up after them being like, oh yeah, like the whole room of people brought together to be like, oh yeah, Griffin and Gargoyles is back in Riverdale, like that whole thing. So it does make you wonder, has it influenced their decisions at all? But nevertheless, a lot of other things kind of went down. We got to break down. Also, Reggie got punched in the face. I mean, he had a bruise on his face because his dad hit him for even asking him questions. So I think that speaks volumes in itself. But we had, Veronica planning a breakout with, because she found out about Archie being part of that fight club and everything. That is going to be interesting, too, because let's not forget, it didn't come up this episode, but Elio's still going to need Veronica to scratch his back because it's like, I did you a favor. So the question is going to be, what's his favor going to be for her, Once again, those things of like, how much are you willing to sacrifice? What price are you willing to pay to protect and save the people that you love? In this case, she creates this large, elaborate breakout. Like I said, was tied to Jughead's game and everything like that. Even to the point, like, Jughead wasn't 100% sure how the game ended. And just as it was ending, like, Archie got rescued and stuff like that and literally landed in Dilton's little shelter. And I was like, huh. It's just kind of serendipitous how that all kind of played together like that. But I guess there's not a lot of serendipity under these circumstances in many regards. Furthering the assholeness of Hiram, the fact of the matter is he was trying to taunt Veronica because Archie and the others had tried to make an escape, but it failed. And it was almost a sweet moment, which is kind of ironic too, that like Archie was covering like Joaquin when the rubber bullets were coming. And the reason I'm saying that being ironic, considering the fact is he was protecting Joaquin, and then later on Joaquin stabs him. Like the moment Joaquin was kind of like, I forgot what was it he said exactly? Oh, I'll ascend, and I was like, whoa. I was like, wait, what? I was like, because at first I didn't know how to interpret it. I was like, wait, is that supposed to represent the warden playing the game? Which it does, but I'll kind of dive into that a little bit. But I was like, no, maybe it could just be they were meant to play use that wording specifically to kind of mess with you, because I was like, he might be trying to ascend to be in Archie's position / the position that Mad Dog was in. The fact of the matter is a position where you get all the rewards and benefits and stuff like that. You kind of get treated like a warrior, essentially. Archie did also kind of get a lot of questions answered. It's like, okay, so how did Hiram frame me for Cassidy's murder? Paid his three buddies off $10,000 each to lie on you, and now they're all hiding. They reference a mine, which I'm curious, is that in it? I doubt it, because I'm about to say, could it be connected to the mine that's in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina? But I'm like, no, that's in Greendale. I mean, be fair to that, I don't know if that prison's, because that prison might be fairly located close to Greendale. Like, I mean, we don't really know like how close Greendale and Riverdale are. I mean, they're like super like right a hop and a skip away from each other essentially in some regards. So, but he mentioned a shadow mine, and just like, I don't know, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina happened, and there's like a mine that plays a part in the plot. And that, so it's kind of like, it makes me think of that. It probably isn't that, because I'm sure they're not going to try and tie the shows together like heavily like that. They'll probably wink and nudge and heavily hint to it, but not fully go into it being like fully connected. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. But I don't know. The fact is they brought up a mine. I just thought it was kind of interesting just because of that regard. What was also interesting is the fact is that Mad Dog came back. I guess it makes you wonder, where was he this entire time then, if the warden could just bring him back like that. I guess like the warden had him shift off somewhere else, but the moment Archie kind of failed, he was like, oh, I got to get my OG fighter back, and brings in Mad Dog. So there's a lot to digest about the situation. Joaquin running away saying like, oh, he joined another gang. Like, because it's like, are you going back to the Serpents? He told that to Kevin. He was like, no, I found someone else. Now, two things to interpret that by that. One, what's kind of went to my mind at first was kind of like, oh, is this part of the game? Is that the gang he's joining? And then I was like, no, he's found someone else. I'm like, the Ghoulies most likely, which that's definitely going to be interesting, just because like a lot of people connected to this show, even though they're not part of the Serpents, they're Serpent adjacent, and that kind of puts Kevin in Serpent adjacent territory. And just because of him and Joaquin's past and everything like that, I think they're going to put them even more so on opposite sides. They were kind of on opposite sides to begin with, even when they first met, because Joaquin being a Serpent and Kevin's dad being a sheriff at the time, so there was that complicated thing. It's also interesting too, because let's not forget the whole Kevin and Moose thing is coming on, happening. And also what I thought was kind of, well, to be fair, like Moose is kind of, things between Moose and Kevin haven't really been on that level. Even because we haven't really seen much of it, considering the fact is, you know, subsequently since Kevin joined the OTC. What's also interesting too, or is it RRTOC? Whatever the case may be. What's interesting, I didn't even think about that, is the fact is Tommy was a part of that, because he ends up talking about like, oh yeah, like I joined that. I was also in, what was it, boxing, I think he said he was. And I was like, huh, it's kind of interesting, kind of another aspect of like the kids following their parents' footsteps, because I didn't even realize that in that regard, that maybe he brought that up before, but I think this is the first. I didn't correlate in my head to think about that when we got that episode last week of that flashback of the Midnight Club. I'm like, oh wow, that it didn't even click in my head to think that that's that. What I also thought was kind of interesting too is that when it was all said and done, FP, you know, when Jug confronted him, was kind of like, you got Alice's perspective. That's not how I remember things. And I was like, huh, we still never fully got his side of things, which is kind of interesting. But I'm sure everyone that was a part of that has, you know, some perspective on the whole situation. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. You know, because there's other people we haven't fully got into this situation. Obviously, we're tiptoeing Tommy and Serena into this. But what about Fred? Hiram and Hermione are still kind of on the outs of, like, knowing, like, their kids know about it. Because the only ones who know are Alice and FP are the only parents that know in this situation. We still haven't cut back to the whole Penelope situation either. So we haven't seen her subsequently since that. So where she stands in all of this as well. You know what's interesting too is, like, I thought was kind of fascinating is the fact is that Hermione kind of got pissed, and not just Hiram for everything, because it's like, you knew about the Fight Club, so that kind of brings you a connection to that. Plus I took money from the warden for my, you know, election and stuff like that. And so I got donations from him, so it's like that complicates things even more. But she's kind of like, both your obsessions. She's talking to Hiram and Veronica. Your obsession with Archie Andrews have led us down this path that could destroy our family. It's like, this is all your fault, so I'm going to fix. I'm like, for one, blame your husband for doing something diabolical like this. But I guess it's like, you know, your daughter is just trying to. She's doing the right thing in a situation. It's almost like you're damning her as much as you are your husband. But I guess because I guess in her mindset, Hermione is kind of like, family comes first. Archie, yeah, he's a nice boy, whatever. He was once potentially family, whatever. He doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, we're all that matters. And both of you doing anything about this whole Archie situation are jeopardizing that. I guess it's very reflective of who, like, Hermione is when it comes to the whole Fred situation, because she kind of compartmentalized after everything with the Midnight Club. She kind of left Fred behind. Things happened before, and, you know, in season 1, like, oh, her and Fred, and then she kind of left him behind to go back to Hiram. So I guess it's a situation of, like, her compromises kind of going forward more and more, and just for her, it's kind of like, my family's the only thing I'm gonna work towards. Everything else, I'll compromise if I need to, if it means getting where I need to be, doing what I need to do. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of interesting to think in that regard. So I think even in her mind, she looks at Archie as the same thing. Like, Veronica's relationship with Archie, I'm sure she looks at it like her relationship with Fred is just kind of like, it's a thing that'll pass. Family's forever. That's how I'm looking at it. Just because of her personal experience with Fred, I think she kind of expects Veronica to look at Archie's kind of the same way, like a means to an end, essentially. So we'll see on that front. What I also thought was kind of pretty neat is the fact of the matter is, when it's all said and done, the comparison runs even deeper because Veronica has everyone there. Obviously we have Sweet Pea, Tony, and Fang there as added bonuses, which I guess is supposed to fill out the ranks a little bit more of other people kind of involved in the situation, potentially. Like, Dilton being there, Dilton's dad being there and everything. But nevertheless, it's a situation of like, none of us are going to say anything about this bunker to anyone. This is going to be our secret. We're making a pact, which is interesting because these are the children of the people who originally made the pact about Griffins and Gargoyles. So it's kind of interesting that it kind of, the continuation of everything going full circle. It's like, dude, it's crazy. And I like that they're doing that. Like how they are like a lot of elements is kind of circulating from the parents to the kids and translating like that. Like a lot of their sins are kind of like repeating themselves, and not necessarily sins, but a lot of their actions are kind of repeating and kind of following their kids. So that's definitely going to be interesting, because the fact of the matter is they're also not going, also you got to think about what's Fred's reaction going to be like. Okay, my son is busted out of there, and it's like, are they going to tell Fred where Archie is or not? Fred might think to himself like, no, I don't need to know where Archie is. As long as he's safe, that's all that matters. I can't know where he is because that would, put him in danger in that regard too. So, and that's another thing too. Archie's completely in the dark about everything that's been going down with all of this. And so it turns into a situation of like, eventually they're going to have to fill him in, which I wonder, will Betty tell the details to him about his dad too? Because it's interesting. We haven't, just because, it hasn't been that long, but we've yet to kind of cut to the farm people either. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But what is interesting is that Jughead is under the impression that whoever started this, whoever did Ascension Night 25 years ago, that person isn't someone that's a part of the Nine. I don't think that they are either. I think that this is someone else. Whoever it is has got some powerful reach, because like the warden, because it's like, because Archie had asked, do you work for Hiram? And he's like, no, I don't. And the fact of the matter is, he was like almost basically saying, I work for a higher power. I was like, wait, is this dude like doing all the shady shit that he's doing? Is he really talking about being religious? And it's like, no, he was referring to this old Gargoyle King thing, which is interesting. It's like, this isn't just warping kids' minds. Like, why would even an adult is being warped by it, which is kind of the craziest thing, which kind of, I think, speaks volumes on who the Gargoyle King is, that they can get inside even an adult's head. I guess it's like, whoever it is must have some training with psychology, as I think is something you have to think about, which kind of points to the farm situation even more, because apparently the farm is good at kind of like, it seems like it's good at getting inside of your head too. So once again, we have to figure out a lot to this, like like I said, like Jug said, with whoever is behind this game has a connection to Riverdale, because it's how they see Riverdale for whatever reason. You even have also have Kevin, Josie, and Reggie deciding to play the game themselves because they know that Betty's kind of keeping secrets from them, along with their parents, about what went down all those years ago, and they're trying to find the truth. So more and more people getting dragged into this. I'm wondering, will Archie and Betty and Veronica be the only ones? Will even they get dragged into it? It's hard to say. Also, let's not forget the warden killed himself. And that comes down to the question of, was that simply because he was buying into all of this and obviously he was trying to ascend? Or was it simply because he knew his time was up? It's interesting timing, because Hermione came to visit him at that time too. I'm sure it's more so a situation of like, obviously she was there to try and clean things up, probably try and buy him off his silence so he doesn't turn on them, kind of ignore any connections they have. Or maybe she was trying to get him out of town before things really kind of hit the fan. Which does beg the question, what happens to everyone else in that facility? Like the people that Archie was going to help out, like what about Mad Dog? What about the others? Like, besides Joaquin, like what happens to them? And then at the end we have the last shot of the episode being Jughead meeting the Gargoyle King, which, okay. So now it becomes a question of like, okay, so what's going to happen there? Once again, I guess it's just going to be us seeing Jug go further and further down the rabbit hole, potentially. What he'll kind of find there, I don't know. But I'm very interested to see kind of how this all ends up playing out. I can't wait for everyone to find out everything. Like, you know, all the parents to be like, wait, you know about Griffin and Gargoyles? You're playing Griffin and Gargoyles? Like, how is, you know, McCoy and Keller going to film once they find out, like, oh, their kids are playing? What about, you know, well, Fred's kind of got other concerns right now. FP already knows Jug is playing. Alice made Betty promise that she wouldn't play, but what about Hiram and Hermione when they find out? Well, Veronica's not playing, but what about Penelope and Cheryl? I mean, to be fair, they have a very toxic relationship, so I'm curious would that even really phase? I'd assume it would, because we saw, you know, Penelope wasn't always the person that she is now. It took those circumstances 25 years ago to change everyone into who they are, which begs the question, how will this game change each and every one of our heroes in the circumstances? Once again, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.